a bit of context around UK Homes Network, I'm going to hand over to Ben, and we'll just dive straight into this subject. So, Ben, you've done a few webinars with us recently, and they've obviously always been really, really popular, because it's a subject that's not really talked about enough in the wider property industry. So could you just, for maybe people in the call that have not come across yourself before, could you give us a bit of an introduction into you, into BTS, and yeah, a bit more about what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, no problem at all, Chris. And yeah, no, I appreciate that. Was a really fair introduction to something that isn't really a very sexy topic in terms of what to talk about. Talking about new connections doesn't suddenly fill everyone with huge enthusiasm to think, wow, this is going to be the most enthralling talk I've ever had in my life. However, it is super important. I've now set up BTS over now 10 years ago. And our mantra is just to help SMEs, help developers with constraints, fixing problems on sites to try and make sure that you're not building and realizing that you suddenly have got a big problem lurking in the background. It's to try and fix those issues as early as possible and know what you're letting yourself in for. We do loads of work for all the house builders, main house builders across the UK. So your Persimmons, your Taylor Wimpey's, your Bloors, both, all of those guys, Linden. And Vistry now is all part of the bigger group. And then we also work for loads of commercial developers as well. And it's just so key for us of understanding what that constraint or that barrier to entry is for your development. Clearly, we know what planning is. We know that that's obviously a big hurdle in itself. But before you've even got to that stage, we're just so passionate about just trying to make sure that you understand, you know what you've got, what's the red line, what is that piece of land, that piece of property that you've got, and what is going to be your barrier to even moving to that next step. And I think new connections is a really important one. I've talked about constraints, and we'll talk about maybe that in itself as well, and actually sort of existing utility constraints as well. But yeah, I think I want to just sort of set the tone first, and I want to set the tone for in terms of what's happened from national point of view and how that's now affecting us from local point of view as well. So I think probably and hopefully quite a few people have maybe even heard about this is the Future Homes Standard. So I've just put it in the chat. What the Future Home Standard is central government effectively turned around saying, look, we need to work out a way of making or decarbonising basically our processes and making our homes more efficient. Future Homes Standard is exactly that. It's trying to make sure that they are more efficient going forward. So this year is for a new property is no new gas boilers. Obviously, that's a really significant thing to change. Now, why I'm picking on that straight away, and this one I'm going to now give it back up to sort of national terms of levels. So I've just been on the energy sort of just generation this morning, and to give the context of just gas in our country, I mean, clearly we've got lots of existing homes and existing businesses that are connected to gas. So as of 10 past 10 this morning, we're using about 14 gigawatts of gas in terms of our generation. That's close to 40% of our generation this morning. Now, this is the peak time because this is what happens at your peak time. We've then got solars now waking up because it lights us. We've got 9.1%. We've got wind at 15%. We've got imports, which I'll go into a little bit of a mix in a second. I'll tell you what that's all about. That's 20% importing energy. Nuclear's about 10%. There's loads of other bits between, like biomass. There's other types of imports. There's hydro, and there's some other bits as well. But hydro is like 3%. So the other bits are all sort of, fairly residual to it. Now, what happens, and it's not a huge surprise in terms of that energy, is it's peaking and troughing depending on what can be used at what particular times. So it's sort of what time now? 6 o'clock in the morning. There was no solar. It's not a huge surprise. It's not woken up yet. But like as of now, it's sort of grown because of now, daylight's all coming through, and that's why we've now got about 3.3 gigawatts as of this moment in time. It also means that you can start to turn off your gas. So your gas kind of goes with the peaks of troughs of the other things coming through. Wind, unfortunately, what's happened is it was windier at 7, 8 o'clock yesterday, and we had 17 gigawatts. However, the wind has dropped off now, and at the moment, literally as we speak, the wind is 6 gigawatts. Now, this is all like, what the hell? Why was this got to do with new connections? But because it's gone lower, because it's not so windy, they've had to turn the gas back on. So actually, it's sort of, we were sort of waking up, well, 4 o'clock this morning, 4:30. Okay, there's not much activity. Gas wise, we're only burning about 4 gigawatts. That's suddenly gone up to 14. Wind has come down. Gas has basically got to find that peaking plant balance. Solar's just coming online. And then in terms of our exports, import basically stays the same. We've got about 8 gigawatts coming in from the side. And they're from all over the place. So they're actually from France get about 4 gigawatts, Dutch about a gigawatt, Norway close to a gigawatt, Belgian about a gigawatt, and Danish about a gigawatt. Now, this context of new connections is that we're saying, right, no more new gas boilers, huge surge in EV. Gas, and by the way, that's gas creating also electricity as well. So that's burning gas creating electricity. So it's a bit of both in terms of the generation and demand that kind of comes through. So it's a bit of a mix in terms of how you sort of see that. But clearly, the government push to try and say, right, we're going all electric. It's put a huge pressure in terms of the system. Before you'd almost have not quite a 50-50, but a sort of a 40-60% balance of 40% being a central heating with gas, and now it's all gone all down the electric kind of route. So again, why I'm just sort of setting that sort of context is it's really the importance of new connections when you're doing a site. You've got to make sure that what's happening is that you're not the straw that breaks the donkey's back. You don't want to be those 5 houses that sends over the tipping balance, and then there's got to be some reinforcement to the local substation or reinforcement to part of that network, which is going to be not necessarily passed on to you, but in terms of time frame and delivery, it might take 1-2 years to happen. It used to be a cost implication. The cost implications come actually from normally the distance of where you are next to something. So we say, in terms of your new connections, the first thing to do is when you've got your site and you're looking at your red line, you can go on line search before you dig. If I get a chance, I'll put that in the chat later on. And line search before you dig gives you all of your utilities, surrounding around your land. If you do it wider, you can start to look what's in the road. You can start to look what's just around you. And that gives you a really early concept to, is there something I can physically plug into, something I can connect to from a water perspective? And that is going to automatically make your development more deliverable and substantially reduce the costs as well. So for that first stage, look at the constraints, understand what's on your site and also what is just off your site. And then that approach to effectively the companies that deal in this environment, either the main headline names that we're all familiar with, sort of your National Grids and your UKPNs, your SSEs, and all your sort of then your Thames Water and things, which we've got some interesting chat about that, haven't we, a bit later on about Thames Water and people like that and Severn Trent and people. But there are also hundreds and thousands of other companies that actually can deliver these services to you. And this is where this whole saving, this opportunity to go to different people, realizing it's not just I've got to go to Severn Trent. There are other people that can deliver those works for you. What's good to understand that is because you need to go and get a quote. And if you're looking at buying a site, one of the first steps we always recommend to people to do, whether it is possible or not, and depending on the circumstance, is when you're making a quote, often the electric utilities companies will ask for a letter of authority. Like, are you the landowner? Well, if you're not the landowner, then where's your authority to be kind of making an application for an electricity quote or a water quote on that land? Now, it might not be that easy or straightforward to get to, especially if you're what your dialogue is with that landowner, but it's a fairly simple piece of paper for that landowner to go, yes, you, the person about to buy the land, can effectively go and make a quote, can go off and go and do that. Maybe that's something can be done between exchange and completion. So, maybe have a delay. So you go and exchange on that property. You think you've found a great site. You're pressured for timeline, but you leave some time in between exchange and completion to be able to do some of those things. And actually, you probably get better engagement from that landowner in that time. So it might be the 5-10 units. And it is the thing you've got to worry about this level and even this scale these days. Also, clearly, if you're rural, you really have got to take note of this. If you haven't got that clear water connection, you're doing a barn conversion, there might not be that sewer outfall that you need. You make sure you're keeping those rights to the existing farm. If they perhaps got that service and that sewer or that outfall to the road, you just want to be you don't want to be isolated that you can only do an on-site solution or an off-site solution. That then means you need a wire from the next farm or the next buildings, and you've got to get that wire over to you, and that might have to go over that might have to go to someone else's land. If it goes to someone else's land, that's going to be an implication. So we always say, got your red line, work out what's around it, and then that'll start that process for you in understanding where you sort of go. So it's that next step. To give you the context, in terms of water alone, there's 1,700 NAVs, they're called. So these new appointments and variations, which are companies which can deliver those works, those effectively the connecting to sewer, connecting your water and your tap water to site. There's that many companies, which effectively means it's a highly competitive market. So don't just stick with one. You can go to others. Go to the traditional, go to your Severn Trent, and then pick two other NAVs and find out what their prices are and what they can do for you. Telecoms, less of an issue we found. It's easy to get site, the apparatus is smaller, and generally a lot of the telecoms guys are quite willing to put their own apparatus in. They've normally got something local, and it is not complicated. So I don't want to labour anything particularly on that one. And actually they will do it, at their cost within time, and it doesn't really seem to be such a huge issue. In terms of gas, clearly we haven't got to worry about that anymore, but now very much electric. Electric is where everything is now at. On average, a new home, and it clearly varies from a 1-bed up to a 5-bed, but if you pick a basic average, it's 3,300 kilowatts, so 3.3 kilowatts. That incorporates or being able to use a bit of, we've got EV charging, and all of our sort of modern sort of mod cons that we're kind of used to as well. And it's that 3.3. We do that for a lot of the big sort of major house builders, and that is because you need to give that information for you to get a quote back. You've got to give something over. You've got to be able to say, well, here is a number. I need a quote back. Electricity is the one I'm primarily focusing on, and we will come back to water because there is some major issues there. But electricity is the thing that is inherent with our home or inherent with our buildings now. And that's why we're saying it's so key to try and get under the skin of that, because everyone else locally is also now putting in retrospective EVs into their homes. They're putting solar panels, they're going for battery pack walls in some of their own homes. So because you're the new development, perhaps, and you're the new thing that's happening, you've got to be just mindful all of this energy is being soaked up by the people. Yes, the electric company's trying to reinforce it, but they are woefully, woefully behind. Again, perhaps a context for this at the moment, some of the big connection quotes we're now over like 4 times subscribed in terms of some of our renewable technology, so our battery technology, that's trying to balance the system. They're going to the big grid guys and saying, right, we want to put our battery in here, and the grid is saying, great, we can do it in 2037 or in 2042, and you're like, right, okay. So the networks are so archaic, it's taking so long for them to push through all this reinforcement, all the changes, the whole change in our energy and where it's sort of produced. Again, it's just really important for you at a local level to just get under the skin of this early days. From a water perspective, Chris and I were briefly chatting earlier.
Yeah.
They've been in the headlines a lot recently, and not for good reason. You just have to be very, very persistent with them. And I'm sure there probably might even be people on this call who have maybe experienced dealing with utility operators. But even when you're using an independent sort of operator, so outside all the big names, all your Severn Trent, Thames Water, they are generally under-resourced. And I think, what were you saying, Chris, about the debt? I think there was like Thames Water.
So nationally, it was 65 billion pounds that they were in debt. But for Thames Water alone, it's 13.5 billion.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Yes, we know they're very difficult in terms of what they've done in terms of polluting all of our rivers and systems, and that's been in the national press. But what we're finding, and very much.
Are you enjoying this webinar preview? Well, if you are, head on over to the UK Homes Network app, where as a premium member, you'll be able to watch this video back in its full version. You'll also be able to access all of our webinars from a range of industry experts and thought leaders from across the property industry. Not only that, as a premium member, you'll have access to our exclusive deal sharing groups, where you'll be able to post your property requirements or even access some of the deals that our members are sharing within the platform. You'll also get a range of exclusive discounts from our friends and partners at UK Homes Network. Just head on over to the UK Homes Network app by downloading UK Homes Network in your app store. Creating a profile takes a couple of seconds, and you'll be able to network with thousands of property professionals from across the country. I look forward to seeing you there.